Okay, sorry for the inconvenience. There was a lights problem. Now, as you have seen the max, you have seen the mean function of the tuple simply used to find out the minimum value out of the all element that is a part of a tuple, and a max will give you the maximum value. How to use it? Simply max under bracket the tuple name and mean under bracket tuple name. And there is a method called sum, which will give you the summation of any tuple, sum of suppose T1. It will do what? It will give you the summation of each element of the tuple T1. But again, the T1 element should be such where the summation is possible. So if my T1 equal to, you have a 1 or 10, 20, 30. So in this case, as you can see, it is a 60. So you'll get the 60 as an answer. So this is a three function, sum, max, mean, and the length just to find out the length of any tuple. Now the next method is of your is count. If you want to count a particular element of a tuple, we have a method count. This was there in the list also. Count, and which element you want to count. Suppose 10 I want to count. And in which tuple you want to count. Suppose T1. So T1 dot count 10 means I want to count the 10 as an element of a tuple T1, and how many times this T10 is available in the T1 it will give you. So here it is 1. So it will only give you 1 as an answer. So count function simply count the iteration or repetition of a particular element in the tuple. Now sorted method. Sorted we use also in the case of list, and you must be remembering. Sorted method. Sorted method just again sort a particular tuple. That tuple you have to pass here in the bracket T1, and it stored that tuple in somewhere else. So if I'll say T2 equal to sorted T1 means T1 tuple will be sorted in ascending order and stored in the T2. You can see the T2, it will give you the sorted form of T1. If you want the reverse order, the same process that you did in the case of your list, you can write comma and then reverse equal to true. If you are writing reverse equal to true, then you want the T1 should be sorted in the descending order and stored in the T2. So this is what the sorted method is. This method of tuple help us to sort out the data of a particular tuple and return the sorted data and stored in a variable. Here T2 is a tuple which will hold the data and what will be replied by the sorted method. So sorted simply sort out the data that you have. And then we have a tuple method itself. Tuple, I already told you, tuple is a constructor. Tuple method is basically a constructor of a tuple which help us to create a tuple. So if I'll say T1 equal to tuple, it will simply create an empty tuple. And if you want it should be initialized with some element, then you must again pass that element in the bracket of tuple. This we already discussed what the purpose of tuple method as a constructor it is. So all the methods are over. Tuple functions and methods. There are certain again 8 functions we have. We discuss about all 8 functions. And starting with the len, that is find out the length of any tuple. Max will give you the maximum value out of a particular tuple if the tuple having the same kind of element, mind it. Otherwise it will give you the error. Mean will give you the minimum value out of the all element of the tuple, and sum will give you the summation of each element of the tuple. Simply you can use the print command and then under bracket max under bracket tuple name bracket close. That is what it is. And then we have index. As you have seen the T1 dot index under bracket the element whose index you want to find out. It will give you the index position 0, 1, 2 likewise. And then we have a count index functions. If you want to see, simply you can say T1 is my tuple T1 dot index. Index is a method, and in that bracket the whose element you want to find out. Suppose B. So B is in my element whose index I want to find. So it will give you, as you can see, 0, 1, 2, 3. It will give you 1 as an answer. So index method simply give you the index position of a particular element in the tuple. So here is the tuple. Index is a method, and then element position you have to pass, and it will give you the position of it. That is what the index is. And the last is the count. Count, as I mentioned, the tuple name dot count under bracket element that you want to count. It will give you the how many times that element is available in a particular tuple. And then we have a sorted, as you have just seen, sorted method simply again help us to sort out a particular tuple and is stored in either ascending or descending in another. It return, it takes the parameter as a tuple and return the sorted element in the another again variable or a tuple that we just discussed. Now using tuple unpacking. Now packing and unpacking, there are two words, packing. So once I am saying packing, what basically it means and what is unpacking, try to understand that first, then we'll discuss about how to unpack. Now once a T1 equal to A, B, C and D, it is a packing because I'm creating a tuple having all four elements I stored. This is one of the way to create a tuple and this is the packing process. Now unpacking case में if someone is saying A, B, C, D equal to T1, this is unpacking. Now each element of the tuple that was there, you are providing that, but you are providing in a different way. As you can see, A, B, C, D equal to T1. In this case, I can change a particular element. Suppose A, B, C, D, four element you have and you are giving A equal to 10, B equal to 20, C equal to, suppose early it was 30 and now you are giving 40 possible and D equal to suppose 50. And I said A, B, C, D equal to T1. It means this all four element will be there the part of T1. This is unpacking process. So once I am declaring a tuple like this is called packing and this is called unpacking. So packing and unpacking of a tuple, this is one of the again topic. Normally we are creating a tuple in the packing form, and if sometime you want to make some changes in the tuple indirectly, you have to unpack it, because as you know, tuple is a immutable data type. It never allows you to change any element or any element value. That is what your unpacking is. Using the constructor functions of the list and tuple, you can create a tuple by the help of tuple method, and you can create a list tuple by the help of a list method. Now let's see how to create a. Now if you want to create a tuple, I may say L equal to list, and inside the bracket you can pass T1. Now what you are trying to do, basically list is a constructor, again you know that create a list L and the element of the list will be T1. For example, if T1 having 10 to 23, so if L will give you like 10, 20, 30. I hope it's very fine. You are passing a T1 as a parameter to the list constructor. Now, tuple may, if you are passing this T1 equal to tuple, and as you all know, it's created tuple, and then you are passing here as L, and L you know it's a list. So list you are passing as an parameter to the tuple. It will create the each element, or it will take the each element of the list and stored in the tuple T1. So this way also you can list and tuple can interchangeably used. You can have element of the tuple as a list, and you can have a list element as in tuple, because element ways there is no differences. Only difference is in list you can do some changes, you can change the element position in the list, but is not possible in the case of tuple. So this is how you can use the tuple in a list and list in a tuple. Nested tuple, you may have a nested tuple also. Now same way you can, how you are creating, suppose T4 is a tuple and I want to create it as a nested. So I may say A, I may say B, I may say C. And then if I have a nested, then inside the bracket I can have suppose D, E, F. What you are seeing here itself is a tuple. Now nested tuple you all know. Once a tuple having a tuple as an element, it is called nested tuple. Here it is at 0 position, 1 and 2, and this is the third position. Now, third position, we have a tuple itself. Once a tuple are inside the tuple as an element, the tuple is called nested. So T4 is a nested tuple. Now, to refer again the tuple element or indices if you want to use, you have to use the same pattern. So if I want to again the first character of the third again position element, that is a 0, 1, 2. So how to refer it? You can say simply T4. And then inside the T4, as you all know, this is a third. So third element I am referring, and then I am referring again 0. So it will give you D. And if you say T4 and then third and then 1, it will give you the first element. Just a minute. Jai Hind students. Welcome back to my Python tutorials, and today it's a second session of mine of Tuples chapter 12 of yours. Now today's objectives are indirectly modifying the tuple. We'll see how to modify the tuple element indirectly, because as you all know, tuple is immutable data type in Python. So how to modify it if it is required indirectly. Nested tuples, we'll see that, and how to access the element of a nested tuple or inner tuple. These are the objectives of today. Let's see one by one. Now, as far as this modifying tuple indirectly is concerned, you must keep in mind the individual element tuple never will allow you to change directly, because tuple is immutable. So you cannot say tuple of 0 equal to 50 or tuple of 1 equal to 30 or tuple of 2 equal to something. So if someone is trying to write like this, if T1 is a tuple and I have elements suppose 20, 30 and 40, and if someone is trying to do T1 and inside the bracket 0 equal to 200, is a completely wrong again in the Python. So Python will give you error. Reason is you are trying to modify a particular element directly using the index number of it. Not possible, it will give you an error. So this must be very clear. Now how to modify if it is required to? Let's see. If this tuple element are required to modify, we have to learn something called packing and unpacking. Mind it, packing and unpacking. Now once I am writing like T1 equal to 20, 30, 40, basically it's a packing one. It means tuple is already packed with these all three elements. Now you have to unpack it if it is required to indirectly modify the tuple element. Now how to unpack it, that I'm telling you. Let's see, if you are considering 20, 30, 43 element, then you have to say A, comma, B, comma, C equal to T1. Now, once I said A, comma, B, comma, C equal to T1, these are the three elements basically I want to refer as an three element of the tuple. So, at this time, you may have any value of ABC because it's a variable, treated like a variable. Now, suppose C equal to 100 you said, or B equal to 200 you said, or A equal to 50 you said, and then again you pack it. Now you can say T1 equal to A, B, C. Now if we'll say so, and A, B, C are the three variables, now this way you can amend it. So first of all, you have to do what? You have to packed again, tuple is required to be unpacked by this way, like A, comma, B, comma, C equal to T1. Here we are just trying to unpack it, mind it. And once you said this, and after that, if you are writing A, B, C, you can understand since the value of A, B, C is already there, so you are referring the three different values now. Early it was 20, 30, 40. And this way you can indirectly modify the tuple. This is one of the way. Second way, by using the constructor of the list and tuple class. Now, you just have a list first created by the list constructor, like L1 is a list I'm creating, and with the list again constructor, under bracket you can refer any tuple T1. Now you may assume this as a tuple, like 20, 30, 40. So what is happening? You are trying to create a list by the using of the list constructor, but inside the parameter you're passing the tuple. Now tuple have 3 elements. It means L1 is now, if you'll see the L1, it will show you 20, 30, 40 in the mid bracket. Now you amend any element because it's a list now. So L1 of suppose 1, I said 300. It means the second element of the list I changed, and now you create the tuple like T1 equal to tuple as n constructor, and now pass the L1. Now since the value of L1 has already changed, now I'm passing the L1, so tuple will get the again modified value of L1 where the second element is 300 instead of 30. So here T1 will be what? If you see the T1, then it will show you 20, then 300 and 40. So this way, by the using of constructor of the list class or list and tuple, you can modify the indirectly element of the tuple. I hope this must be very clear. First of all, you create a list and pass the parameter tuple in the list constructor. Your list will be created. Amend the value of list because list is a mutable data type. So here I am changing the particular element of the list. Python will not give you any error, and your list is ready. Now try to create the tuple with the same list that you have amended, and your tuple will be created, and this way you can amend, and that is how indirectly modifying the tuple element by the help of packing and unpacking method as I have discussed here, and by the help of using the constructor of the list and tuple. I hope these 2 points must be very clear to you all. Now come to the nested tuple. Now nested tuple, as you all know, once a tuple itself is an element of a tuple, then it's called a nested tuple. It means any tuple that you are talking having a tuple as an element, it's called nested. Let's see the example of nested tuple first. So nested tuple is a tuple having tuple itself as an element inside it. For example, T1 and is a tuple like 10, 20, and then we have a tuple itself like 30, 40, 50, and you may have a different element after that also like a 60, 70. Now just see this tuple T1 having, this is 0, this is at 1 position, this is a second position, this is a third position, this is a 4 position. So if you see the length of this tuple, it will simply show you 5 as a 0 to 4, that is a 5 element. No doubt, isn't it? So 10, 20 and this 30, 40, 50 which itself is a tuple as an element is a of T1. So there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 elements. So length of this tuple is, if you see the len of under bracket T1, so it will give you 5 as answer, right? Now, since a tuple having a tuple itself as an element, that's why the T1 is an example of nested tuple. So this is how to write a tuple as a nested and how a nested tuple is. Now, next question is how to access the nested tuple element since it's a nested now. Let's see. As I mentioned, this is a 0, this is 1, this is 2 itself completely till this, and then third and fourth. These are the different again index position of the nested tuple. Now to refer a inner element, one of the again objective today, how to access the individual element of an inner tuple. Here inner tuple means I want to refer the tuple inside a tuple as an nested one. So 30, 40, 50 is an inner tuple here. Now if someone will say T1 and inside the bracket, if you will mention in the mid bracket T1 of 2, what it will give you? You all can assume it will give you completely again 30, 40, 50. Since I mentioned the T2, if I'll say print T1 of 2, it will give me 30, 40, 50 because this itself is a tuple element at the second index position. Now the question is how to refer the 30 as an element of the tuple that is inside it, individual element we want to refer. I cannot use the 2 then. In that case, I have to do what? I have to mention the T1 and then of course the 2 that is the second index position, and as you all know, in the second again, at the second index position, this 30, 40 having the index 0, 1, 2. So we have to refer separately 0. Now once I am saying T1, 2 of and 0, it means it will give me only 30 as an answer. If I'll say T1 of 2 and 1, then I'm talking about the second element of my nested tuple, that is a 40. So 40 is the answer. And if I'll say T1 of 2 and 2, it means you are talking about the third element of it, and it will give you 50. So this is how to refer the inner element of, or accessing the element of an inner tuple. Inner tuple means the tuple which is inside, element inside in the form of a tuple, inside a tuple, that you can say. Otherwise simply you can say if any element itself is a tuple inside a tuple or in a tuple, then it's called an inner again tuple. And to access the element of a tuple directly, you can say entire again element you want to, then just index you have to mention. T1 of 2 will give you the entire again 30, 40, 50 as n third element of the tuple. And if you want to refer a particular again or individual element, you have to mention the index position of the main tuple and then the sub-index position of the or index position of that tuple for the accessing the individual element. So this is what it is, how to accessing individual element of an inner tuple. Tuple having the other tuple inside it as an element are called nested tuple. You can have a nested tuple. A tuple can have any kind of element, any kind of data type as an element. It may be a string, it may be a list, it may be tuple, it may be float, it may be integer, and tuple is an immutable data type. So I don't think there is any query or there is any doubts. Indirectly modifying the tuple, if it is required, you may by the help of packing and unpacking method and by using the constructor of the list class and tuple class, as I had already shown you. Nested tuple, the tuple inside the tuple is called nested tuple. T1 example of the nested tuple you can remember, and then how to access the individual element of the inner tuple. And with this all topics, your tuple chapter, that is chapter 12, is over. And I hope you will go through this video again and again. You'll try to make a note and try to clarify all doubts. If you have any doubts further, feel free to ask me either through the WhatsApp or you can directly write in the comments box of my video. And please subscribe the video also, so that you will come to know the next arrival or new arrival of my video. And the next session of mine, definitely I'm going to cover the chapter 13 of yours computer science, and that itself is a dictionary. So thank you all. Please keep on watching these videos and liking and subscribing the videos. Don't forget. Thank you.